listening to the musicmarketing.com podcast. How to sell more music, get more people to your shows, and make more money in the music business. Here's your host, music marketer, and author of the book Six Figure Musician, David Hooper. Joining David is his co-host, Wendy Wallace.
This is the musicmarketing.com podcast, episode number 3. My name is David Hooper. I am in Nashville, Tennessee. With me, my co-host, Wendy Wallace from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Wendy, how are you?
I'm doing great, David. How are you tonight?
I'm fantastic. I'm great. I'm excited about episode number 3. We're going to follow up on the house concert interview you did in the last episode. That was really great.
That's right. Thank you. And we're going to talk about your thoughts and give people your tips and suggestions. You're going to elaborate on that interview and tell me what you thought of what was said and what wasn't said.
Yeah, he had a lot. I thought he had a lot of great stuff. I mean, this is a man that is really into the house concert scene, so much so that he has concertsinyourhome.com, which is not only just a website, it's a full-on community.
Right.
With I don't know how many people it is. I would imagine dozens, definitely, if not hundreds of people that host concerts and also acts that play them. So there's a great opportunity certainly for independent bands to be part of that, and we'll talk about that. And more importantly, not only being part of it, but how to really take advantage of it. Sometimes I feel, not just house concerts, this isn't specific toward that, but a lot of times bands or musicians will get into something thinking they're taking advantage of it, but it's like a hamster on the hamster wheel where they're doing the work, but just kind of turning around in a circle, not really going anywhere. So we're going to give some advice on how to make sure that that doesn't happen. You actually get something out of the effort that you put in.
Okay.
All right, so how are we going to start this out?
Well, I remember we talked last week, and I think when I did the interview, the most of the focus was put on how to make a house concert happen if you are an artist and somebody else wants to host you in their home, for the most part. So let's start out by talking about, I'm wondering if you can give any tips to musicians out there who want to host their own house concert and really like make it an event. I'm not talking about just like putting together maybe a quick gig to make some money. But let's say the scenario is you're in your hometown and you want to do a special event or special gig and you want to make it a house concert. What's the best way to go about doing that?
For a musician who is in his hometown, I would approach this in a totally different way than what was said on the interview in episode number 2. That really is for touring musicians, for people that are out trying to reach new fans. If you're going to do this in your own town, I think that's a perfect opportunity for you to do what I call the VIP route. Go exclusive. Don't let everybody come to your house. Don't try to get as many people as you can, but really do something special for people. I think maybe an acoustic show if you're used to doing electric shows. Maybe an electric show if you're used to doing acoustic shows. Something just a little bit different. Maybe have a special guest, like a guest artist that you can do duets. Have you ever seen live at Daryl's house, Wendy, with Daryl Hall from Hall & Oates, what he does?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good example. I've watched almost every episode of that show.
So he'll have upcoming artists come in, and sometimes some classic artists. I saw Joe Walsh from the Eagles on there recently. So, classic artists like that, or a new artist like Chitty Bang will come in there, and they'll maybe play Hall & Oates cover songs, or Eagles cover songs, or Joe Walsh cover songs. They're not really covers, I guess, because the original artist is in there, but he'll have guest artist on them. Mm-hmm. So you have an opportunity like that. I think there's an opportunity if you've got other artists that are passing through to jam on your stuff. And that's what I would do if you're, in your hometown, you want to do something special. And it's a great way to leverage stuff too. If you've got an artist coming through town that you know from your touring or know from other endeavors that you're doing, you could do like, hey, this is artist from New York coming through Nashville, and we're going to do some special stuff. We're going to play some of my songs, play some of her songs, and kind of trade it off. And then you could actually get that out to their fans and your fans as well.
Yeah, I guess what comes to mind is I think every major city has some sort of a music festival at one point or another during the year. And so when there's a lot of touring musicians coming through, a local musician could do that kind of event. Something.
Yeah, I think the thing about house concerts that I really love, though, is not going local, because part of the issue with house concert is if you don't have another place to play. That's what it is for me anyway. That's what I use it for as far as music marketing. Now, there are people that do nothing but play house concerts, and if you don't have another place to play, which I suppose is still that same category, because you're a certain type of artist where venues maybe don't cater to your type of music, or you don't cater to their type of music, is a better way of saying it maybe. You would go for a house concert for a totally different reason. But I love to think about house concerts just as a way when you're on tour, and if you've got a 400-mile stretch and there's no club in between, maybe set up something at a house in between to make the drive more profitable and make it just make financial sense a little bit more. Or if you're playing in a town that you're driving to, there is a club. Maybe you've got an extra day, a day off. You can stick around a little bit longer. You can make a little bit more money from the house concerts, but also give your fans something a little bit different that's going to get them engaged with you and more connected to you.
Okay, so let's back up to something that you said a bit ago about there being some musicians who just do house concerts. And I remember when I talked to Fran, and he said that he couldn't think of anyone, or actually what he said was one of the questions that he often gets asked is if there was like a musician, like a famous musician who had started off doing house concerts and then worked their way up. And it's not that I expect you to come up with, an example of that, but can you talk about like how a musician can go about doing the house concert tour thing, if that's where they choose to maybe start, or who is that best for, like actually, going down that path and doing that? Who is that?
Well, I think the thing about house concerts is that you don't know all of the house concerts going on in your area. They're not advertised in the paper. They're not on the radio. They're not on television. Mm. People don't buy tickets for them usually. It's a word of mouth kind of thing. So the truth is, we really don't know how many people have done house concerts. I will tell you this, that Beyonce, who just played the Super Bowl, is available for bar mitzvahs and has played bar mitzvahs. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gloria Estefan, house concerts. Carly Simon, house concerts. Janice Ian, house concerts. You can get these people to play your house. I mean, Beyonce is going to play anywhere if you've got enough money.
Right.
And apparently some guy did for his bar mitzvah. They brought her in, right?
Right.
So there are a lot of these. I call them secret gigs. That's what I've referred to them. And they're corporate gigs. I know ZZ Top did one in here for General Motors. This is probably 10 years ago at this time. But $400,000 for a ZZ Top gig. You never heard of them.
Right.
Playing that gig because it wasn't advertised. It was for General Motors executives, but they made $400,000, and you may have to remove a few zeros off of that, but you can do these gigs and not be heard. So there are bands that are doing house concerts and corporate gigs and similar events. So I think they're really good for anybody. I mean, it's not just a money thing like the corporate events usually are. The house concerts are so much more intimate. They're a way for you to really connect with either fans that you don't have, or for people that are into house concerts. And those are the kind of fans that bands like, because we always wonder, man, how come people just aren't into music anymore? But the truth is, there are people that are into music. They're really into music people, and those are the same ones that go to house concerts. So it's a good opportunity to get connected with those, what we call super fans in the Six Figure Musician book, the people that aren't just going to come to a show every once in a while or buy your greatest hits album, but buy everything that you do.
Okay, so you had said also too that it might be kind of difficult to know. I understand you were talking about it in the context of it would be difficult to know just how many house concerts are really going on. But let's say that you did want to connect with people, either people who are familiar with doing house concerts because maybe they've hosted many, or people who haven't hosted one, and if you maybe, threw out the idea that they'd be open to it. So obviously there's websites, right? Like Concerts in Your Home. But any other ways that you would suggest a musician kind of put the word out there and get a feel for, who's open to doing it and who?
Sure. Yeah. The best way, Wendy, is just like you would find a date or find a job. Hey, do you have any single friends? Hey, do you know any job openings? If you're building your mailing list as an independent band, and you should be, and if you're not, again, the book, Six Figure Musician, available free, musicianbook.com, that'll get you started on that. But if you've got the mailing list, you can go out to your network of people that you already have and say, hey, we're in New York this week. We're on our way to Los Angeles. Here's the highway that we're going to be on. If you're along that highway and you have an open date between this period of time and this period of time, we would love to talk to you about playing a house concert. So it's just starting with the network that you have and going from there.
Okay, so then on that note, you're planning a tour, you put the word out. What are the best ways to really plan out a tour that involves both club gigs and house concerts?
I think that it needs to be part of a bigger plan. So I'm glad that you're talking about club gigs. I think that you can do solely house concert tours and have your fans through that network of people. And there are bands that are successfully doing that, but most bands want a little bit more, I would say, fame and maybe fortune. I think there's probably more money in the general club audience and general music audience than there are house concerts. But with that said, it's a different type of money. It's a lot of people paying you a little money instead of a few people possibly paying you a lot of money. So if you're going to do, I'll use the example of the band that's in New York going to Los Angeles. What I would suggest is just, and this is what, let's take it back to ZZ Top. This is what ZZ Top would do if they were on tour. You have these what we call anchor gigs, and however you get from New York to Los Angeles, you'll have anchor gigs along the way, and you would just put the house concerts in between the anchor gigs. If you've got to drive maybe 500 miles over a period of 2 days, let's say, in between that 500-mile drive, there's probably a little bitty city or a little town. You can start looking for house concert gigs, or in their case, maybe corporate gigs in between those dates.
Okay. So one of the things that you often talk about a lot that I don't know why, but I'm completely fascinated by, is basically taking some sort of an experience, like as in like a live gig, and really making the most of it, so that it's not just about you playing and then getting paid and then driving away. It's that you take away from that either people's email addresses or new fans, or you get that kind of that, pictures on Facebook or something, right? So how would you recommend that somebody really make the most in terms of marketing themselves when it comes to a house concert to really ensure, because here you are playing with maybe 10, 20 people, I don't know, maybe 40 people at the most, maybe in a house concert. And so small group of people, how would you recommend like repurposing that experience or ensuring that the experience itself like really is documented so that all of your fans all over the world can see what you've been up to and get a sense of the enjoyment that people got out of seeing you play live?
You talked about this with Fran, and I thought he added a very interesting aspect on it. Aspect, is that what I'm saying, Wendy? Sorry. He had a very interesting perspective on it. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Lost my word there for a minute. His thing was that he felt the house concert was a very intimate way to see music. And part of it isn't just you watching or listening, but it's you spending time with your friends, just friends hanging out. And music is, as I say, the background noise. And I do agree with that. And I think that's one aspect to keep in mind. But like what you're saying about repurposing and documenting it. And I think that if you can show people the intimacy of a house concert and show them that what you're doing is maybe a little bit different, as we mentioned, maybe it's like duets, or maybe it's cover songs, or maybe it's acoustic when you're electric, whatever. Maybe it's a cappella. Maybe you're doing your stuff and there's absolutely no instrumentation behind it. I don't know what you're going to do, but if you can show fans this and show them they're doing something different, yeah, you can document that and send that out, and that might actually help you get more house concert gigs, because I like what he's saying, but also like what you're saying. And yeah, I think that you probably should record it. I always say if it's worth performing, it's worth recording. So absolutely, I would record it. You can use the audio. Sometimes, depending on your level of skill, you can get great videos. You mentioned, I know, on the podcast number 2, talking about doing live streaming. He didn't really agree with that because of what I just said. He's really into the intimacy of house concerts, and I think that's great. But at the same time, if done right, you can have a 1 or 2 camera shoot where people can go back and forth depending on their setup. They can choose the camera. You can give them 2 cameras at once, and you can mix it and then take it straight into the internet feed. So it sounds pretty good too. And I've seen guys successfully do that. It's not going to work for everybody. And when you're doing like a live event like that, there's a lot that you can mess up on. But if you're technically savvy and you're available to do it or able to do it, it's a great option.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed, to be honest, about like him kind of suggesting that maybe doing live streaming isn't the best idea, because I think the thing that he mentioned as well is that the thing about like when you're playing, his thing was that do you look in the camera or do you look at the audience? And I gotta say, like, from a fan perspective, I've watched like a lot of stage shows and on Ustream and all of those websites. I've been on all of them and watched gigs. And if there's someone that I really love, like a performer that I really love, and they're playing a house concert, it doesn't really matter to me if somebody just set up like a MacBook Pro and use the webcam on a stool, and I could just like see the experience. It doesn't have to be like great quality. That's still meaningful to me. So I don't think that having like a webcam or a camera is really that intrusive to a performance. I just, maybe for
it could be. So let me say a couple things. For one, what you're talking about is kind of a voyeur experience,
right,
where you're just watching other people participate, right, and that's there's a word for it. We call it voyeur. So obviously,
you make it sound so naughty.
So obviously there are people that enjoy that type of activity. We'll leave it at that. But I would say that there probably is a rule, like if I were to be with you at a coffee shop or be with a friend at a coffee shop, there is certain etiquette. You don't want to be interrupted by phone calls. You don't want to be interrupted by text messages. We've all been there at the coffee shop or the restaurant where somebody that we're with just a minute, I've got a call. Oh, just a minute, I need to return this text. Oh, have you seen? And they're always, checking Twitter or Facebook or whatever people do on mobile phones. So if you're at a live event, your people, the true fans, the ones who've actually gotten in the car and driven to see you, those are the ones that you need to be focusing on, not the voyeurs, we'll call them, not the guys that are coming through online. But at the same time, the online experience for somebody to watch. Some people, this is the honest truth, man, is that you've got people that are disabled. You got people that maybe they can't drive, or they've got a suspended license, or they can't afford a car, or you're just never going to be in their city, and it gives them an opportunity to experience you. So I think it's actually a really great thing that you can do about broadcasting live if you feel comfortable with it, both performance-wise and also technical-wise. So the other thing, too, that comes to mind when I think of that interview that I wish Fran had elaborated on a little bit was about how to do things like sell merch and get email addresses. I don't know. Again, I've never played a house concert, so I couldn't say, but I would imagine if I did, it would be might be a little bit awkward, because when you're playing a club or a bigger venue, people have certain sort of expectations. They're cool with a merch table. They're cool. They understand it's part of the whole thing, the whole experience. When you're playing in a house concert in someone's home, and you have such a close,
connection with the small group of people that you're with, that maybe like you might feel a bit weird selling merch because you just want to chit chat with people. It's like you know, it's almost like if you had a dinner party or something, you're not going to try and like talk people into buying, you know, whatever, like on their way out the door. You know what I mean? It's like, because do you know what I mean? Like,
I do. And I think a lot of bands are uncomfortable with that. And it certainly takes brass balls when you've got 10 or 15 people to pass around the hat.
Right.
That can work for you in a lot of ways because people feel social pressure. If the guy in front of you, it's kind of like being at church, right? The guy on the left of you put in $20 and the guy on the right of you's got $20 ready. You know, you're not going to feel real great, you know, putting in a couple bucks,
right,
or just passing the plate to the next guy. So I think that can work with you. But for the band that's up there that's either passing the hat, sometimes it's good to have a host do that for you and say, look, these guys, and kind of give them the reason why. That's what we call in marketing. This is a way to get more money. Give people a reason why. Say, listen, these guys are playing this house concert because they've got a 500-mile drive, and this was 250 miles into it, and they wanted to share their music with you. So, you know, let's help them out, get them the next 250 miles they have to go, and they're playing the next show, and then they'll be on from there. So I think, you know, it's an opportunity with the small crowd to show them the work that it takes. I think that a lot of fans, you know, we watch MTV or listen to the radio or read stories of Lady Gaga and her private jet made of meat or whatever. You know, Metallica, 4 guys, 4 different jets. You always hear these stories like that. Mm-hmm. And they don't really understand what it's like for a real independent band. This is a great educational experience. So I don't think that bands should feel bad about asking for money. But it does take guts. You've got to ask for the sale, and you've got to be quiet. That's the toughest thing for a brand new salesman to do. And you can ask, if you know a salesman, ask them that, and they'll tell you that. You got to ask, and you've got to be quiet. And again, to take it back to the dating analogy, you know, if you were to ask a beautiful woman for a date, you know, say, would you like to go out with me? And then start making excuses on why she wouldn't. You've got to just sit there, be quiet, and allow her to say yes. Okay, so I'm a bit confused. So you get money, like, from playing a house concert, but then what about, like, selling CDs or T-shirts? Or, I mean, do you bring that stuff? I mean, and... Okay. So you were specifically asking about merchandising then, not, like, the donation of passing around the hat. Is that...
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, you know, it's the same type of thing, and I'm glad you mentioned that again, because this is something else that I meant to mention just now. I think that when you are in that small type of crowd, ask. You really should ask, because people don't understand unless you educate them what the economics of this thing is. So it's really, really good to, let them know that you need money. And I think that if you're providing them a show, that it's what we call consideration in the legal world. You're doing something, and they're doing something for you. So one scratches the other's back, or whatever you want to call that. Here's the thing about it, though, is there is kind of like a non-attachment to it. And if you're going to be in a small group like that, you can see if people are actually buying or not. And the same thing happens in a club. You just can't see them. Not everybody is going to buy your stuff. I'll give you an example. Personally, and this fits into the music business realm here. You know, I mentioned the book, Six Figure Musician. You know, I'm giving that book away. If you go to musicianbook.com, you can get that book for free. Thousands of people have downloaded it. There's an option for you to pay for it. You can get a paperback, you get a Kindle version, you can get an audiobook. Not everybody's doing that. I can't worry about the people that aren't. I'm going to worry about the people that are. But also respect that everybody has access to the information. That's the reason that I'm giving it away for free. There's a bonus to me for everybody to have that information, even if it's free. And by the same token, there's a great thing that you get from having your music be heard by people, because they can go out and tell people about it.
Well, that leads to my other question, in that how do you walk away from that house concert? Again, even if it's only a few people, handful of people, how do you walk away knowing that you've established a relationship with them? In that, you know, how do you get their email address? How do you try to ensure that they're going to talk about you and post about you online and, you know, talk about you on Facebook and that kind of thing?
Well, here's what I do for every gig. And recommend this to every band, every musician. I think this is talked about in the book. If not, it was edited out. It should have been talked about. Every gig you play, you need to have a different mailing list for. So if I'm at Nashville, Tennessee, I'm just going to use my hometown here, playing the Exit In on a certain date, I'm going to have a specific mailing list just for that club. So I can say, when I come to town the next time around, hey man, especially if I'm playing the Exit In, hey, remember us from the Exit In? Yeah, we kicked ass on February the 9th. Yeah, you were there, and we're going to come back. It's now 30 days later, March 9th, and hope to see you, same venue. You know how to get there, and give them the rest of your pitch. So I think that's the same way to do it in a house concert, and it's probably easier to because you're actually meeting the people. You keep in touch with them just like you would you met somebody at a party. You're going to take some pictures. You're going to send the pictures. I think didn't Fran have some great advice about that? I mean, he was talking about getting a mailing list or like a physical mailing, like say, hey, I'll send you something cool, and he would make a postcard and send people with photos of the evening. So you have something maybe to put on your refrigerator or something, and he could do it right before you left town. So I thought that was a fantastic idea.
Yeah, it was a good idea.
So I mean that's like the kind of the house concert intimate experience. You can send them a postcard. Maybe what I would do is if you're a touring band, you're in Nashville, Tennessee, you're going to be in Memphis tomorrow night. Send them a postcard. Hey, we're in Memphis, made it in Memphis. Thanks to you. Hope to see you next time. Give them something a little bit different.
So in the remaining minutes, is there anything else that you wanted to share about house concerts before we wrap up?
Well, I really liked what he's talked about when he kind of questioned what is success. And a lot of bands think that it has to do with playing for a lot of people or playing big venues, and that's one aspect of success. But there are also a lot of bands that you've never heard of that are out there making a full-time living. I think if you can make a full-time living, that's pretty good. I don't think it's lowering your standards. And they're guys that you've never heard of that are out there doing what they love because they are true musicians, and something to think about. You could do that via house concerts. So sometimes I see musicians or bands get really caught up in other people's definitions of success, and that's probably, we all compare ourselves to other people, and we find our own version of success or whatever through other people. But I think that what he said was really great about getting clear on your version of it and realizing that there are as many definitions of success as there are people. And, this would be one of them. It's not necessarily what it is that you thought it was a year ago or 5 years ago. So I would encourage anybody who's listening, and this is good for you and me, Wendy, too. I mean, we really should go through this, I would say, every year. The beginning of the year, what do I want to do this year? What is going to make me successful this year? I used to live in a big house, maybe a smaller house is going to work for me. I used to drive a BMW, but maybe the Honda the Honda is going to be good for me this year. Mm-hmm. We can change. People change and plans change. And I love what he said about success because it really is what works for you, not for other people.
Yeah, and I would also say, too, the thing that stuck with me when he mentioned that was that the most awesome things can happen in the smallest of, or what is seemingly a small opportunity. So never discount things that don't necessarily fit into what you expected them to be. And, as in, you may go on tour and maybe, spontaneously decide to do a house concert, and that house concert ends up being like the best gig of the whole tour, even though you were playing mostly clubs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think just be open to surprises because you never know. You never know when that really great fan that knows somebody and is going to pass you along. I mean, I know a lot of stories, and the book tells some of them, and we'll probably talk about some of them on the show, about how people have been what we call discovered, how, they've gotten their record deals or how they've gotten their opening slots for a major tour. And it's usually the funniest things. It's like a limo driver or a hairstylist or a babysitter. There are things that you just don't know about. So that's probably really great advice to end the show, and just say yes. Say yes to opportunity.
Right. Yes. Yep. Perfect. I actually found a file. I remember, like, before we started the podcast, you asked people on Facebook to post their questions. And I copied and pasted those in a Word file, and we're going to go through those and answer those. So if anybody has any other questions, to post them on Facebook as well, and we will get to those, because people had some really good questions.
Yeah, or just you can hit me up via Twitter anytime. David Hooper, one word, all lowercase. And if you want the book that I've been talking about the whole time, Six Figure Musician, it's at musicianbook.com. That's to get the PDF free. I've also got an audio book, and that guy, he's a good audio guy, isn't he? Good voiceover. I wish I sounded like that. That's free as well. If you want an Audible 30-day trial, it's at... what is it, Wendy?
Just go to Musician Book.
Yeah, just go to Musician Book. Yeah, I think it's audibletrial.com/musician if you want to go directly there. But anyway, the book is Six Figure Musician, and I appreciate everybody downloading it and spreading the word about it. It's been really, really great. Wendy worked a lot on it. You can get to see all that she knows, because she's almost the co-author, really. She didn't write it, but she told me what not to write and what to write.
Okay, all right.
She was like an angel and a devil at one time.
Okay,
so
wrap it up, David. Let's wrap it up.
All right, so this was episode number 3, musicmarketing.com podcast. See you next time for episode number 4. Wendy, thank you so much for being here. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And if you got any questions, check us out online at musicmarketing.com.
Thanks
Let me know.
for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening to the musicmarketing.com podcast. If you have any questions or comments, email David and Wendy at musicmarketingpodcast@gmail.com. To listen to past shows and get even more music marketing advice, visit musicmarketing.com.